Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, Chapter 9 Breakdown, entitled Surrendering to One Diet. And continuing from the last chapter dealing with an ending on the overall point of the conversation's quote-unquote holiness, the conversation's quote-unquote godliness. The experiences for our conversation. The experience with the living God is initially, primarily, firstly, for our conversation. If we could look and go to a place where we can say God is there, and we can see God doing things, and we could see, quote-unquote, God living physically before us doing things, and the experience we could say and should say ought to be physical, because what we see and the leader governing that experience is physical. But if we're going to hold the Bible to its standard, John 4:24, that God is a spirit, and Luke 24:39, that a spirit does not have flesh and blood, because we cannot go anywhere and say God is there physically and in that context, because we cannot see a quote-unquote God doing anything. We have to understand and accept that the experience is inward. The experience being inward, the transition means that everything that we are doing, it is not for our physical self initially, it is not for our human being primarily, it is not for us biologically firstly. The experience is for our conversation's conscience, for the body of our faith, for our conversation's thoughts and feelings, or for the spirit of our conversation's mind. That which is of the flesh is flesh, that which is of the spirit is spirit. This verse highlighting a separation of experience. If John 4:24 is true, and we're going to believe that it is true, then we need to understand and accept that what is for spirit is spirit, spirit to the Bible meaning mind. What is for mind is mind. The experience being for the mind. And yes, there is an experience for flesh. That which is of the flesh is flesh. And so we have a deciding factor going on, which is what the 9th chapter of the book, Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, talks about. And in talking about this, it opens with very key verses, two of which talk about the fact that the life of the flesh is in the blood, and a sound heart is the life of the flesh. These two verses play off of one another. The life of the flesh is in the blood, a sound heart is the life of the flesh. Now again, when we're hearing this term flesh, I'm sure we can get it by now, but this term flesh isn't relating to the literal flesh, because God has no literal flesh if we're going to take the Bible as being factual. The flesh of the living God is not our human flesh. The flesh of the human God, of the living God, the flesh of the living God is a body of devotion, or is a body of character. Let's not think literal. Literal arms, fingers, eyes, lips associated to quote-unquote God is not what the Bible's talking about. What is spirit is spirit. The organs of spirit deal with the organs of spirit. We have to keep it in that context. If we take it out of that context, then we travel down a path to the Wizard of Oz. And we don't want that. The organs of the spirit or mind are the concern. The flesh, spoken of in the scriptures, is primarily relating to the flesh of our faith's body. This is not literal flesh. This is not a literal body. This is a body of understanding. This is a flesh of principles. And the life of the flesh is in the blood. A sound heart is the life of the flesh. These two verses are playing off of one another. And what we can make out from this is what this chapter, the 9th chapter, points out to us, is that there are two types of life that we can maintain. And again, this word life is not literal, physical life. This is not the life of our human being primarily. This is the life of our devotional conversation. We can maintain our conversation by the life of blood, or we can maintain our conversation by the life of a sound heart. We can maintain our conversation by the life of blood. We can maintain our conversation by the life of a sound heart. We can either eat, quote unquote, blood, or we can eat, quote unquote, soundness. And while we're doing so, bearing in mind that the two, though one, though bad, both can become equally intolerable with an inordinate consumption of them. And so we have to find a balance. We have to find a balance because in the Bible, there is talk of blood or blood of violence. Paragraph 10 in this 9th chapter talks about the self-prescribed medications that we feed to our own hearts. And this, in this paragraph, is based off of the ending of the previous chapter and some of the chapter before that, but a quote from the apostles advising on what to abstain from. Abstain from meats offered to idols and things strangled, and from fornication and from blood. This is a list of things that makes our conversation pure. Should we listen to it? And when it comes to blood, there are two types of blood. There is a blood of violence, and yet there is a blood of soundness. Now, this term blood, although the term blood to us is blood, literal blood, to the Bible, blood is not simply blood. To the Bible, blood means experience. Blood is figurative language meaning experience. The saying, eat the flesh of the Son of Man and have life in you, is not a saying to make you believe that you are a vampire, and the one saying so is also a vampire. Yes, there are religions that do consume blood. There are religions that would have you believe that consuming blood makes you something and something else and something more and something more, of which is completely irrelevant and illogical, put into the context of the Bible. In reality, this word blood, though we may believe it to be literal blood as we're hearing it, this term blood is a figurative illustration of experience. Blood equals experience. Blood equals experience. Blood equals experience because the shedding of blood is a sign of conflict. It is a sign of warfare. It is a sign of ugly communion. So we can either have the blood or the experience of violence, or we can have the blood or the experience of soundness. And the key to maintaining the life or the essence of our conversation's conscience is abstaining from certain blood from our heart. Blood, again, experience from our heart. That experience, meaning indulgences, the meats of our heart's center. Refraining from those meats, refraining from that center. Getting the organization of our conversations, thoughts, and feelings engaged and redirected on something higher. Now, that engagement on something higher may not be what we believe it to be when we hear, and when I'm going to say that the higher engagement our faith should be tuned into is actually a lowering of our faith's thoughts and feelings. What does that mean? That means that when we're consuming indulgences within our heart in this quote-unquote hour, in this quote-unquote heart, I'm not talking in reference to the human, I'm talking in reference to the devotional. This is all for the devotional conversation. Everything from Genesis to Malachi to Revelation, it is all discussion for guiding our conversation's conscience to a better form of devotion for the sake of our human growth and development. This is the hidden wisdom within the scriptures. And it is all written in a form that is secular or that is a bit cartoonish. Cartoonish to us because we are used to Greek and Roman and Egyptian lore. This is the age we are in and have been born into, this Western approach to history and philosophy. But the approach of the minds or the authors that wrote the scriptures, this isn't our approach. And unless we're willing to let go of our approach and enter into the approach in which these things are given and written, we can not know the approach of the authors that wrote them. And so the approach for the devotional conversation is actually a withdrawing from the devotional conversation so that we may be able to know the poverty associated with our devotional condition. Knowing the poverty associated with our devotional condition, this allows us to embrace certain thoughts and feelings about how to get better and where to look for getting better. Turning to the scriptures, allowing the scriptures to be guide. Learning that there is something within us that needs help that nothing from outside can do. All we are left with is us. And allowing ourselves to understand that there is no help within us, for us. Allowing the scriptures to do what they're supposed to do, which is to guide the conscience of our conversations, thoughts, and feelings to the point where we can retain wisdom from that guidance to instruct our human being. And so the other approach, the better approach, other than consuming prescriptions for the heart to regulate our devotional experience, better than receiving theories to guide and to comfort, is to accept a lowering of our conversation for correction by the words that are within the Bible. Now, should we do this, we entertain and enter into the possibility of recapturing the body by the living God's grace. Now, this body, again, not literal body, the body of our faith, the body of our understanding, by the living God's grace. The living God's grace being the substance of creation for our conversation's growth and development. So there's a reason why all of this is supposed to take place. The refraining from the prescriptions that we have in our heart that feed us the blood that we are used to having and feeding on for the sake of receiving the opportunity by grace to receive peace within the mind of our faith, for wisdom and knowledge to guide and better our human being. It is the creation of our devotional conversation that allows the creation of our human being to take place. Now, the human being, although physically formed, brain, whatever you want to consider to be decent and full, we are not fully human in its truest sense. All we are is alive. So it is the forming of our conversations, thoughts, and feelings by the wisdom given by grace, and then the application of that wisdom on a daily basis, learning through trial and error, allowing a conversation to understand its own character and our faith's intellect to grow wise to the intention within the scriptures. All of that falls back down to our human being, to where our human being can receive the instruction it needs in order for it to wake up. And this thought on grace actually sends me back to my book, Justification, which I have a chapter dedicated to grace and to what it is and to its point. Chapter 4 of this book, chapter 4 of the book, Justification. And in paragraph 10, it states that grace is for government of mind. Grace is for government of mind. And in chapter 13, it is saying that this government of mind, grace, is actually the gift that assists creation. And it's true. Our conversation upon conception within the religious world is unhealthy. We don't know that it is unhealthy. If we are lucky and willing, we will get to a point in our experience where we will see that it is unhealthy and experience that depression, to where we can either decide to quit it all or to take serious our conversation's growth and development, which the scriptures encourage. And so jumping into the scriptures and employing what we learn, doesn't matter what it is, employing what we learn to learn the principles of it, whether it is decent or indecent, we, no matter what, will receive grace. Grace being the currency for creation, the creation of our conversation's conscience. And so this 9th chapter in the book, Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, ends. It ends stating that we have an option. We have an option to live a particular life, and not literal, primarily devotional life. We have the option to maintain unhealthy blood or to maintain healthy blood. We have the option to maintain an unhealthy experience, or we have the option to maintain a healthy experience. One is unhealthy, unnatural. One is healthy and definitely natural. It is supposed to be natural, to where we pick up the scriptures and then live. This is what the first 5, 6, 7 chapters of the book of Proverbs are about. Turn to, open, read, pick up, live, learn my commandments. Let them be on your heart. They shall add peace and long life to you. That's not natural to us. When we enter into the religious world, we enter in as children in thought and in experience, and believe that what we're hearing, just as from our literal parents, we believe that what we're hearing is the truth until we are supposed to grow up and know that it is not that real or valid, until we experience for our own self. And so our faith has maturing to do, is what this 9th chapter is saying. And we can either mature in a credible way, allowing the scriptures to do what they're supposed to do within for us, or we can remain immature, allowing the prescriptions of religion, of our opinion, to cater to whatever ego is in us. So we can either have a not so healthy devotional experience while our ego is satisfied, or we can lower ourselves down to allow the scriptures to teach us, so that we can then rise back up by the understanding we retain. So there is an option, but there is honestly only one diet that matters. And that diet being the one where our faith is humbled into the dust and then is resurrected to the point where our human being can receive edification and health from it.